Hello, this is FXWB New Beginnings podcast with Michelle. We are so grateful for you tuning in last week, listening into our podcast recording with Miss Emily Miller, and we are back with Miss Emily Miller this week. Thank you so much for your comments, your enthusiasm, and just listening in and hearing her story and her passion of helping others. You know, we here at FXWB is all about enhancing one's well being. And this is one way we do it by sharing others' passions, their ability to want to enhance your well being in different ways. This time around, we're looking at going to a therapist, a family therapist, being able to learn from this therapist what's going on with your family, and then, getting guidance through and navigating through the challenges that we may be facing. Whether you have young children, teenagers, adults, it's all well and good that you have that opportunity to, get to talk to someone and trash things out if there has been conflicts or current conflicts that you may be having, to get help to navigate through those situations. So thank you again, Emily, for joining us here at FXWB New Beginnings podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Great. So, Emily, you touched on talking about helping families in your practice. We want to go a little further in understanding exactly what do you help them with. And we were talking before, off air about some of the values, if or passions that you try to share with these families. Let's talk about that today.
Sure.
What are some of these, values or concepts that you tend to help these families with?
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, I think that at the very beginning of therapy, one of the things I want to know, because I believe that it's important to everyone, adults, teenagers, kids, I want to understand the sense of value or worth that a person has. And also, I want to understand their sense of purpose and identity.
Yes.
And so these are things that we talk about at the beginning of treatment. I ask for permission to talk about them, and usually people are pretty agreeable to that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
for those who are believers, they can appreciate maybe what the Bible has to say about these things as well.
Yes.
And I think that really helps us to understand and orient to truth rather than just what I think.
Right.
Because a lot
So
of people, yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
so we looking at having a value system. So we're looking at like what it is we standing on. What
Mm,
truths are we standing on
mm,
or basing this conversation on, right?
right. So there's a value system, but actually when I ask people about value, I'm asking them about worth. What am I worth? What is a person worth? And rather than what they believe, although usually we've already established what they believe. They've told me about that in the first session, and we're already probably in session 3 by the time we're talking about value.
Oh,
And
okay.
so,
Good.
uh, because I don't want to, I ask people only to answer one of these spiritual questions per session so that we can get into the meat of what they're hoping to talk about that day as
Right.
well. And many times I find that they become interested in the idea of value and they want to talk about that.
Good.
Uh, Not every time, but sometimes. And and so we're trying to understand what God says that we're worth.
Yeah.
In comparison maybe to what the person thinks that they're worth, whatever they came in thinking, because I'm curious about that first. And so there's two particular passages that I really think narrow in on this.
Okay.
Although there are many that we could reference, I like to look at a couple specific ones. And one of them is in the very first chapter, which is Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, as a
Yes.
woman, I love this passage. I think God, in his infinite wisdom, he knew ahead of time that he would be called sexist. And he said, let me get it straight from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
I created man and woman in my image. And I was thorough about this. I made sure that I looked in the Hebrew as well to make sure it wasn't just my translation that was mentioning it this way. And sure enough, man and woman are mentioned specifically. And so I know that as a woman, even though I'm different than man, I was created in God's image just like he was. And
Yeah.
I really can appreciate
Yes.
that.
I too. I too. I love it. Yep.
So I think this is pretty significant. Now, if we look at the poetic literature, we can also see this. Psalm 139, 13 to 15 says, for you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth.
Yeah.
So that's such a beautiful almost painting, I think,
Yes.
of the idea. And so here we see from David's perspective that we were formed, knitted, and woven.
Yes.
When I think of formed, I think of clay and how it has to be maybe a certain thickness here, not too thin, not too thick, or it'll either shatter or not bake all the way in the kiln. It has to
Right.
be on at a certain temperature and for a certain length of time, and you might even put a glaze on it to preserve it. And when I think of knitted, I think of every baby blanket that's ever been made for every mama and baby or father, and how much time and care and precision
Yeah.
went into that planning. In fact, I've been told by some of my clients who knit, as we've discussed this, that if you make a mistake, that you have to start over. And I
Oh
didn't
wow.
know that, of course. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so that's a lot of dedication there. And then
Yes.
weaving. So my understanding is that in more ancient times, heavy pieces of machinery were moved by multiple women to create something, and that today it's more maybe computer generated than not. But it still takes. I mean, just the fact that a computer is needed shows that this is a complex process. So
Yes.
we also see that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and wonderful, the root word, is said twice. So whenever we see something said twice, we can count on it being for emphasis. And
Yes.
fearfully made, some people are surprised by that, but in Proverbs we hear that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So we know that we are to fear God. We don't need to be fearful people. We need to fear God only. And so
Yes.
this is how we're made. We're made by a creator. Of course, we would fear the creator.
Yes.
And we're made well. And so this is my argument that I present before my clients. I always give them a chance to disagree with me in whole or in part, but I
Uh-huh.
believe that we are innately valuable, that we don't have to earn our value.
Right.
I believe that no one needs to affirm it for it to be there. If a tree
Yes.
falls, does anybody hear it? Well, I'm saying you are valuable whether anyone acknowledges your value or not, or whether you think that they acknowledge it or not, because you might be mistaken. Uh, and I believe that you can't lose your value. I believe that whatever God placed within you and created wonderfully will always be there because He placed
Yes.
it there. Now,
Yes.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything with it. That's getting into purpose.
Right.
But I believe that that value is still there no matter what you do with it.
Yes. You start
Oh,
with the value. You don't have to
exactly.
earn it. You already have
Right.
it.
Exactly. And,
Yes.
and so, as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this
Yeah.
topic. Uh, I
But that's
believe,
okay.
I guess part of what makes me passionate about it is I believe there have been times when the church has gotten it a little bit wrong. That might be too bold of a way to say it, but it has been confused about how to talk about this.
Right.
I think that they're very concerned about the idea of self-esteem. Uh, and so there can just be these the church sometimes can go so far that it makes people feel as if they are nothing or not valuable, and
Right.
God is everything. Well, we know that God is everything. We know that God is amazing. We know that He created the value, but He created it within each one of us with our unique
Yeah.
character traits and
Yeah.
passions and talents and all of these things. And that is pretty special. And for God to use those things is a good thing. And we can be excited about it.
Yes, yes, because he did create us perfect. For as
Yes.
far as he's concerned, we are perfect in his image. And
Mm,
if we remember that, I think when people try to refute that, you have to still come back to I if you believe in God, then I'm perfect in his image. I'm his child.
yeah.
So what you saying not going to
Mm,
hamper my thinking or my value that he has placed
right.
on me. So I think that's really important to set that as the first thing to discuss
Yes.
with people. So good.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes. If we are His child, how much greater is that even? I mean, first of all, we are set apart as man and woman. Human beings were set apart. You know,
Yes.
they were given a different place than the animals.
Right.
Just by being created as a human, you've already been given the top tier. No
Yes.
one else was created in God's image in this way.
Right.
And so, but to be a child of God, of course, is even more so valued
Yeah.
because in that position, we actually could be considered princesses and princes because we're the
Yeah.
daughters and sons of the Most High King.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so that is even more special, of course, than just being created by Him. You are
Right.
aligning yourself with Him. You are
Yeah.
choosing to be His child. Uh, so we could even talk about purpose in conjunction with that. I think that many people are uh, thinking that purpose is very much value and getting these two confused. And so I'd
Uh-huh.
like to tease that out a little bit because I think that they're not the same, even though they might hold hands. And I could think that my value is the fact that I'm a mother or the fact that I'm an employee or the fact that I own my own business or the fact that I'm this or that title. And I think that that is can be troubling to us if we align with that. And I'll explain that a little more perhaps later.
Uh-huh.
So I think purpose for a believer is unique because we get these last words of Jesus, these instructions in the last bit of Matthew chapter 28, 19, and 20. It says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe or obey all that I have commanded you, and surely I'm with you always to the end of the age." And so we know that for a believer specifically, that we are to have this in mind. I mean, whenever someone has last words, they get written down, paid attention to, recorded. Everybody's there to hear them. Maybe we even feel burdened by them, depending. I want you to have 12 children. Yes, mom.
Yeah, no. Not
But
me.
Jesus wouldn't give us this type of burdensome word. You know, He would instruct us in His way, which is good. And so if He tells us to do this, then it's good. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, and I could see the difference between value and purpose because now the value it has set who you are. The
Mm-hmm.
purpose is what you do. So
Thank you,
there's a
Michelle.
difference. So
Yes,
there is
thank
a
you for saying it
difference.
so clearly. And
Yeah.
but as clearly as you articulated that, some people get that all mixed up inside of them. And actually, I can't tell you how many people, even those who don't profess this sort of belief as I do, who have said, yes, I agree with these three things. And I realize I've been getting these two confused. And so, yes, I believe that they're not the same. That
Yeah.
so that I would say that these last words of Jesus set up the framework for the purpose of a believer. And that we uniquely live that out with all the traits and talents and passions that God gave us in our own way. And we can even look to a couple other places to see some instruction on this. And I believe that this could apply to a believer or an unbeliever, but we could see the parable of the talents.
Yes.
And so each servant was given talents. Jesus probably told this story many times, so we see different amounts or examples, but the idea is the same. I'm going to use the 1, 5, and 10.
Yeah.
So, one is given 1 is given 5, 1 is given 10. The one with 10 comes back with more. He's praised, well done, my good and faithful servant. Same story with the one with 5.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, a talent is a sum of money in
Yes.
this passage. And the one with 1 comes back with the 1 because he buried it in the ground. And the master says, why did you do that? And he says, well, I knew you were a harsh master, even reaping where you didn't sow. And so I buried it in the ground where it would be safe. And he says, if you knew I was a harsh master, why didn't you at least put it in the bank where it would earn interest? And this servant was punished. So I would say that although I believe a ruby in the dirt is still a ruby, that
Yeah.
a ruby in the dirt is a shame. What potential it had to be on a beautiful piece of jewelry adorning
Yeah.
someone's neck or finger, and instead it's in the dirt. And so I believe that we are called to do something with the portion that we've been given.
Yes.
And that to do that is right and good, that we are meant to work hard. And
Yeah.
so I believe this is what that teaches, but I believe that we're all different. And the First Corinthians 12 passage highlights that. It talks about varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit, varieties of servant, but the same Lord, varieties of activities, but the same God empowers them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I actually think that this is almost like a comedy. Okay, I pulled out just a little piece of it because I want you to hear it. I mean,
Uh-huh.
first it goes on to list a bunch of these gifts.
Right.
But then it says this, for the body does not consist of one member, but of many. And it's speaking of the body of Christ here.
Yeah.
This is specific to the body of Christ. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? And I think it even goes on to say, if the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell?
Right.
So, but I always imagine this in my mind when I'm reading this passage, and it makes me want to laugh. I see this giant eyeball, like several 100 pounds, with a bunch of pink goop coming out the back,
Good.
and nothing to connect to, no brain, no direction, so it can't even see,
No.
actually.
Right.
And so it really does make me laugh. This is the idea that all of the parts are necessary and needed. They're
Correct.
not all the same. How boring would that be? And how ineffective.
Yes.
The eye without a brain cannot see.
No.
And
Cannot.
so this is the body. We all have these unique talents and traits that we put to work, and it makes something beautiful together when they are together. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that is amazing. And I think that it keeps people from feeling that they need to compare.
Right. So it's not a competition. It's rather you have a specific part to play as well as I do have a certain part to
Yes.
play. Even though we are both hands, each hand has something else to do, you know?
Yes.
So it does work in tandem. It's
Yeah.
not that you don't need one. You need the other one. You do.
Yes, exactly. So we don't have to compare to others, and many people would agree that comparison it brings unhappiness,
Yes. It does.
dissatisfaction. And I believe that just the idea that God made every snowflake different means that They don't need to compare themselves. Why do we? I mean, there's
Right.
never been another Michelle Bailey like you. There's never been
Yep.
another Emily Miller like me, although there have been many Emily Millers, you know.
Many Michelle Baileys. I know, but they're not like me.
There's never been one like me, and there never will be
Right.
another like me. I mean,
It
that's pretty significant, isn't it?
it is. It is.
So we each have this unique part to play in the tapestry of life. And I
Yeah.
think that's pretty amazing and pretty special. I mean, I have been able to appreciate uh this is one of the ones that stands out in my mind. I saw this man in the meat department, just it was all a mess, and he just like rearranged it all, and it looked perfect, and it was just in seconds. And I thought, that was amazing. Fast hands. You should do
Uh-huh.
martial arts. And just being able to appreciate the unique qualities that God has given each person. I think that's what we should be doing for ourselves and for others.
So when you discuss these two concepts of value and purpose with your clients, and helping them to see the difference, does it give them like an aha moment as to realize that, hey, I'm actually different than you, but I have a purpose. I'm still a child of God, but I still have a purpose that might be totally different than what your purpose is, right?
Right.
So how is it accepted, you know, when you
I
talk to
think,
your clients?
I think it often gives them an aha moment. But here's an area where I see people get stuck. And it's become something that I'm passionate about because of that stuckness. I don't know what my purpose is yet. I want to know. This is what
Right,
they'll tell me. I haven't found my purpose yet. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this.
right.
And so I think of it this way. I like to make purpose small.
Got you.
Purpose can be this big, grand thing that God has for us to do. But it may not be that big, grand thing at this very moment.
Right.
I believe that God gives us purpose in every moment of every day. And that if
Yes.
we're living that out faithfully, that's what we need to be doing. And if that leads us to big, grand things, wonderful.
Yes.
But your purpose might be in the interaction you have with the clerk at the gas station. It might be in a moment that you have with a coworker, or the way that you looked at someone when you were walking down the sidewalk. Your purpose is everywhere all of the time,
Even in the family setting.
even in the family setting.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the way that you made eye contact with your family member and didn't roll your eyes. It's all these moments.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I believe that this connects also with our identity, how we view ourselves. And I actually recently I would participated in a workshop with a bunch of ladies, and we were talking about identity. And it helped me to discover a few things that I
Okay.
hadn't discovered before. And I think one thing that is significant is that I have faced a few challenges, as everybody does. I have faced a bulk of them, I would say, in the last few years with my health and my family's health.
Right.
And as of the end of this year, my family will have had 10 surgeries with the same department since 2021.
Oh wow. That's a lot of surgeries, ma'am.
Five of them were mine, and they were all in the same body part. And as a consequence of that, I had bilateral pulmonary emboli and
Oh,
one cardiac event, possibly a cardiac arrest. And so I've had these like near death sort of situations, makes me appreciate a lot. But I would say what I've also come to appreciate is that during these seasons, sometimes your life changes.
oh
And
yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit about how my life changed. When I had my second surgery and I had the bilateral pulmonary emboli, at first I didn't realize that it was affecting me because I wasn't moving a lot because I'd had surgery. But as I started moving around, there were times when, for instance, I had to call my husband because I was in the middle of the frozen department and I couldn't breathe, and I needed him to come get me.
All right.
Uh, there were times when I didn't know if I was going to be able to do my job that day. There were times when I was sitting with my clients thinking, I can't breathe, and my body would start to just not function quite as well when I wasn't getting proper oxygen or feeling like I could breathe. And I would also become this, I didn't know because I was ignorant, but when you become short of breath, you can also become nauseated.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I'd feel like I was going to throw up.
Okay.
So these were things that were happening to me. Well, it really impacted my ability to do my work during that season and to be a what I thought was a good mother or, be able to do anything that I had thought or planned to do. But here's the thing. If I identify with these traits that God has maybe made me passionate about or made me think of myself. I've thought of myself just for whatever reason. If I identify with those things rather than who God has actually created me to be, then
Right.
I will always have times when I will run into problems.
Right.
And so I realized that I needed to think differently about this. And if it's all right, I wrote a few things down during this workshop as I was having my aha moment that
Yes.
I thought were significant. And so I had identified myself as athletic and fit and a mother and all these things. And during these last few years, I found myself realizing actually I am disabled. I can't walk more than 7 minutes. This
Right.
is not who I thought I was. Uh, and I can't get out of bed today because I'm not doing well. So I thought, I need to identify with the core of who I really am, who God truly created me to be. More of Him, less of me. Take nothing for granted. Both empathize with those who have more suffering, because I know there are many people who have had lifelong health challenges and these sorts of things, but also don't minimize what you're going through because it is your specific challenge that
Yes.
God has allowed you to face. And allow yourself to feel that experience and also believe. Have faith. Take heart. Uh, Trust your gut and the instincts God gave you, because I realized that me speaking up and advocating for myself and my family, because the condition that I have, actually, my son has, and he will be having his second and third surgeries by the end of the year. If I had not been a little bit pushy, I hate to say it, he would never have been screened for this condition.
Right.
If I had not been pushy, I would not be here today. I
Right.
advocated for myself. That was why I got diagnosed with the bilateral pulmonary emboli. And if it hadn't been for that, I could have died that very day.
Right.
Uh, and so these are some things that I learned. Uh, I learned to rethink how I'm thinking about myself. I don't think I ever would have said, this is my identity. It was just what was running in the back of my head. I wasn't thinking
Right.
my identity is being fit, being this, being that. But it was back there and I was struggling with it, even though I didn't know it, if that makes sense, Michelle.
Yeah. Because so I've heard the three concepts coming together with yes, you are a child of God. You are valued. That is your value, but your purpose hasn't really changed. Your purpose
Right.
is still that of wanting to help others with
Yes.
their life and helping them understand who they are and understanding and then now identifying what they need to be doing, or rather who they are to create that opportunity for sharing their purpose. I think
Mm,
it's learning more of, we are so accustomed not being told or being told to stop thinking about self, but we really do need to find out who we are and
mm,
identify self first. Because
right.
when you describe saying, I'm fit, I'm healthy, and I'm thinking maybe that's what you were told or that was what was perceived, versus, and more so, those things are just, to me, just, it's not so much identity, but rather just things.
Mm,
Versus it wasn't describing who you are.
right.
I think that's the difference that
Mm,
I'm seeing. Is like most of the times we will say people will identify us as kind. Yes, they might identify us as kind, but who am I?
right.
Is
Exactly.
there's a difference. I am
Mm,
kind. That to me is like the outcome of who I am.
right. Exactly. Yes, we can think that our character traits or talents or whatever God has given us are who we are, but
Right.
who we are is found differently. In fact, these are the things that I arrived at for myself. Uh, Let me make sure I'm in the right spot here. I said, I'm a new creation. I'm adopted. I'm free from the slavery of sin. Uh, I'm able to be a healing person. I'm an
Right.
ambassador. I'm a sweet aroma, hopefully, most of the time. I'm able to see the heart more than before because of Christ in me. Uh,
Yes.
I'm able to work through fatigue or health problems or whatever I'm seeing
Yeah.
because it is He who empowers me. I, as I said before, I'm a princess of the Most High King.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. Never thought I'd
Right.
have that title. Every woman wants to be a princess, at least when they're a little girl.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
But you realize that, oh, I know you do, but people listening, if you realize your identity is more so what you value, and if you value that you are a child of God, then your identity becomes that.
right.
And now it's more so you
Mm,
recognizing that your identity is that of what you value.
right.
So
Right.
it
Because
influences it a lot.
exactly, because these things that we're identifying with then as a child of God, they don't change because we encounter a big car wreck and our world flips upside down,
Yes.
or because we're no longer able to do this or that because of age or
Right.
whatever it may be. They don't change. We're still able to do these things because we're identifying with very little, just the
Right.
basics. We don't need to, if I'm an Olympic athlete and I encounter a major challenge, does my world flip upside down or where am I rooted? If I'm rooted in this sort of identity that we're speaking about, then I'm okay.
Yes.
Uh, I can be
It's
okay
just a
with it.
circumstance. It's just a situation.
Exactly.
It's not you. That's not you. It
Right.
hasn't changed who you are. So
Exactly. So this is exactly what my clients come in with. You know, they have a circumstance, they have a challenge, they have a health crisis. It's been going on for a long time or a little time. They have something different in their life. They have a family member that they've lost. They have grief that they've experienced. They haven't been able to conceive a child when they wanted to. But if it's not impacting their identity, then they can get through it. And
right.
so I work with people in this sort of way. I help them to identify what it is that they're most hoping for as a result of therapy. They might be hoping for a few things, but whatever they're most hoping for, that's what we connect with. And so
Good.
as we talk about that, I ask a lot of questions, and my hope is to help people get into their imagination and into their five senses and to experience a little taste of the difference they're hoping for.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
they can experience it a little bit in their body or in their mind as we're walking through it, they are more likely to experience it outside of the session. And
Right.
so I'm asking them all kinds of detailed little questions that might sound silly, honestly. Like, where would you be sitting when you were experiencing this new version of yourself?
Right.
Uh, what would you be having to drink? What would you be thinking about? How would you be thinking about it differently that would be allowing you to be this version of yourself?
Right.
Just these I want them to pay attention to the details.
Got it.
I want them to notice when even the smallest amount of that difference is present.
Right.
I want them to be able to see that they're making progress.
Good. Good.
Because when they see that they're making progress, they will be encouraged to continue. And
Yeah.
how do I know this, you might be thinking? Because I do this myself.
Right.
I'm not just doing this for my clients. If I'm being honest, this might not be encouraged, but I know Elliot, who I mentioned in our last episode, he has a new book out about doing this for yourself. And I haven't read it, to be honest, but I was already doing this for myself before he wrote it. I'll actually do almost like a little mini therapy session for myself, and I'll ask myself some of the same sorts of questions. Emily, what's been better? And this could become in the form of a thankfulness journal for anyone who's looking
Got it.
for how can I apply this to my life. They might write a thankfulness journal. But I'm thinking, what's been better about what I did? How have I more been the version of myself that I want to be?
Right.
And I might also notice that there were other things that were better outside of me, and I want to take time to appreciate that. Maybe they were as a result of the differences that I had in my own life, and maybe not. But
Right.
if my husband did something I really liked, I want to write that down too. I want
Right.
to appreciate that. Or if some life circumstance was better, I want to write that down as well. I really want to pay attention to all the things that have been better. And I think sometimes we're surprised when we start a practice like a thankfulness journal that there are more things there than we expected. I've done the challenge where you do 90 days thankfulness journal. You write down 3 things a day. And I remember I thought, if I don't repeat anything, I'm not going to have enough. But I challenged myself to not repeat. And I was so surprised that by the end of 90 days, I had at least 270 things I was thankful
Okay.
for. Isn't that pretty
Okay.
incredible?
I like that. A 90 days thankful journal. I like that.
That
So that's
doesn't
something we
come
could
from
implement.
me. But it came from, there was an author that wrote a book about thankfulness. I can't remember who it was. This was years and years ago now that I encountered this. And I
Uh-huh.
just took that challenge to heart and tried it. So I won't take credit for that, but
Progress.
it is a great practice. Uh, and I'm going to ask myself, I'm probably going to be thinking about some challenges I'm still facing, some things that I still want to be different. And so I will then wonder, okay, what is it that I want to be different? How do I want it to be different? What do I want to be better in my life that I
Yeah.
personally can impact? And
Right.
I'll identify that. And then I'll think about it. I'll think through, okay, if this were to be different tonight when I get home from work, what would I notice? And I'll
Right.
walk myself through that. Now, I will admit, I'm a therapist, so I can ask myself a lot of detailed questions that I would
Right.
ask a client. And maybe not everyone is prepared to do that. So sometimes it does help to have the help of a professional, certainly.
Yeah.
Uh, but it can also be useful just to do some of this ourselves. And so it's up to you how you choose to proceed with that if you're listening. But I do I do think there are things we can be asking ourselves and reflecting on that do help us to move toward the change we seek.
Yes. And it's good that you mentioned that because a lot of times we want to do things on our own, but we really do need to seek help because sometimes it's always good to hear things from a different perspective to
Right.
help us grow and even grow and learn even more about our own selves that we didn't even recognize or have been putting down all this time of what are some of our great talents or purpose as the case might be, and then now you realize you've had the purpose all this time, you just was suppressing it.
Right, exactly. I absolutely encourage that, Michelle. In fact, I take my scribblings to a therapist and I share them with him.
Right.
And then he says, "What do you need me for?" I would say, "Well, I
Sure.
just appreciate you listening to it and me coming to you get motivated me to do this."
Yeah. Yeah, so we do need help, we all need help, um hearing it from somebody else, listening and learning from others, because at the end of the day, as we mentioned before, we all may have talents and we may have similar talents,
Hmm,
but the way it is constructed and how you deliver it to somebody may be totally different than how you may do it to your own self or to somebody else. And that's why, okay, there are about 50 million personal trainers out there, but my personal training style may be different than somebody else. Same thing with a therapist. Anybody out there that's trying to help, we all want you to know that, hey, we are all different and unique in our own special way. It doesn't mean that one is wrong or the other is right. All it means is how you relate to that individual helps to
yes.
know that if this is the right fit for you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
I agree
So
with you.
thank you so much, Emily. You really did break down the concepts of value, purpose, and identity, which helps us as a family unit, as an individual, as a person in a community, a group like your work setting. Just learning those three concepts and really honing in on them and understanding the differences between them helps us to be relatable to whatever we do in our
Mm,
life and wherever we find ourselves in a family versus in the workplace
right.
versus as an individual. Just learning and understanding self helps us to be better,
Mm,
to be able to
yes.
relate to others. And
Yes.
getting help for that is important too, because then you would realize your perspective might be even smaller than what others see you as.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yes. I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to think about us, as you said, because an empty cup doesn't pour.
Yes.
And if we want to be pouring, if we want to be helping people, when I talk to people about purpose, almost all of them say they want to help people in some way.
Right.
Uh, that would make sense. That's a good purpose to have. Uh, then we need to be able to pour. And
Yeah.
so if we are tending to what we, if we're reflecting on ourselves, if we're feeding ourselves spiritually, uh, if we're thinking about these things, considering these things and striving for the
Yeah.
best, then we will grow. And uh, if you're interested in that idea of growth, anyone listening, then look at the first or second Peter chapter 1, starting at verse 5. and it speaks to these qualities, and that these qualities are yours and are increasing, it'll keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the
Right.
work that God has given you to do.
Yeah.
And so we want our good, beautiful qualities to be effective, to be
Yes.
fruitful. We want to be producing something. And
Yes.
so we do need to be growing and nurturing these qualities in us.
Yeah.
Uh, and paying attention to them in this way, I think, does help us to grow them and nurture them.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Emily, for pouring out to us this
Yes.
information today. Guys, I really hope this was an opportunity for you to even reflect on yourself and to learn from yourself and learn from us what are ways that you could help yourself in life in general and help you identify what may be your purpose and who you are and what you value
Mm.
so that it you can feed into others your passion and your gifts and talents and you would be able to be one that others may want to come to. In that sense, what we want to make sure that we're doing is if we need to be fed, we have to find people to be fed to
Mm.
help us, really nurture and learn who we are. I would recommend Emily, anyone who's looking for a family therapist. And as she said before, she looks at helping families. It's not just individuals. As an individual, I'm pretty sure you could come in as well. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You want to be able to, have someone that is open minded to helping you with what's going on with you. Obviously, when you come to a therapist, a coach, anybody who you come to, you have to have that open minded persona to be able to get help if you're
Mm.
seeking help. Because if you don't see it that way, then this individual can't help you. Because if you keep yourself closed in, you're not going to get the help that you're looking for. But, this looks different for everyone. And learning how to be open to understanding who you are so that you now can spread your gifts to the world is important. It really is important. So we are thankful for you, Emily, sharing your gift with us today, or gifts, because it's more than one. It's more than one. And we thank God for that. Tell us, where can we find you?
Yes, so I have Serenity Christian Counseling is my practice. You can find me on Google. You can find me my website, and I have a practice in Indianapolis and then one in Speedway as well, right by the track actually. And I'm accepting clients currently. If you're looking for a therapist, I do accept a few insurance plans as well, if that helps you out. I do like to help people out in that way.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out if you have questions about that. I'll do my best to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily, for your time and your knowledge and your passion. We are grateful for you sharing that with us today. Guys, if you missed the first recording, please go back and learn a little bit more about Emily and reach out to her. Let her know what your needs are and what she can help you with in your journey of life and enhancing your well-being. We are grateful for you listening. Again, you can subscribe to and follow us here at FXWB New Beginnings Podcast with Michelle. Today we had Miss Emily Miller with us. Thank you so much, Emily, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you having me.
Yes. God bless you guys, and we will be back with FXWB New Beginnings Podcast. Looking forward to sharing more with you. Have a great day.